Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of our conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Our hot topic for today is the U.S. electoral divide. Where do you stand? For today's broadcast, we originally wanted to convene a panel of Muslim brothers who are emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually mature enough to engage in a challenging conversation on these 2024 elections in a balanced and respectful way. Brothers who are capable of disagreeing, if necessary, without becoming disagreeable. The way things worked out, we ended up adding a well-qualified sister to the mix. Alhamdulillah. My guests for today's broadcast are the following. Professor Nadia B. Ahmed, retired attorney Mohammed Bashir, practicing attorney Sharif Silmi, and Imam Yusuf Rios. Now, what I'd like to do is begin today's broadcast by giving each of them an opportunity, 3 to 5 minutes, inshallah, to say a little bit about themselves and then something about this topic of ours for today. Share some opening thoughts on the focus for today's conversation. Let's begin with you, Sister Nadia.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Brother Mauri. I first just wanted to say that my wake-up call wasn't 9/11. It came much earlier. When I was 5 years old, I went to the mailbox and saw this cover of National Geographic, and it had a picture of the Afghan girl, Sharbat Gula, and she had these really strong, piercing eyes. And I could see like she was caught between this war between both the U.S. and the Soviet Union in her country. And I was later on in elementary school. I remember the first Gulf War and watching the explosions on TV. My mother said sarcastically, like, "These are fireworks." And so the horror that really kind of struck with me in terms of the images of the bodies that were torn apart, and then having them embedded into walls with shrapnel. And then we also saw the genocide in Bosnia. And I remember also the local mosque refusing to allow us to organize as a community. And so my mom ended up having the bus show up at our house to get people to take them to DC. And then in college, I protested the Iraq War while I was a student at UC Berkeley. And I really thought I had an understanding of global injustices at the time. But then when I went to study Arabic and Islamic law in Damascus in 2000, I happened to arrive 3 weeks before the Second Intifada broke out. And suddenly everything I had learned and thought about the world, the law, and even Islam itself really felt like a lie. And then when 9/11 happened, I knew we also had to organize our community to really mobilize. And I felt that the political will at the time was really fractured, especially after the passage of the U.S. Patriot Act. And so I was asked by Answer to come organize in New York against the World Economic Forum, which was held in February of 2002 in New York. Every year, it's usually held in Davos, Switzerland. But there they decided to hold it in New York in solidarity with New York after the September 11th bombings. And so I really spent like weeks and months trying to organize. and I wasn't really able to get people to come to support. And then I was actually told that there's one brother who can help you, but he's in Baltimore. And so that brother was Brother Mauri Saalakhan. And so, in the years that followed, there's been, a lot more issues that have come up. We've had a really brutal political landscape. And I still think that we have to hold on to hope. And so even like in over 2.5 decades or so that I've known Brother Mauri, it just coincidentally happened to be again on the show right minutes before it was announced that Joe Biden was dropping out of the race. And so Brother Mauri didn't say it at the time, but I felt that like he was leaning towards supporting Kamala Harris. And it took me longer to do that. But I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris because the left is where we have built political power for not only demilitarization, but also decarceration for land back movements as well as indigenous rights. And to make lasting change, we need to also realize that change sometimes happens at a glacial pace. And so if we want to make that 180-degree turn, we have to start making shifts that are like 25 degrees so we can land into the current that will really be able to make us have a complete transformation. And so, I've been a Democrat, and I also support the Palestinian resistance and also support the full right of return to the 1948 lines. And that's why I'm also making the choice to normalize the discussion of the right of return within the Democratic Party. And I'm not only looking at 2024 because what's already happened for this race has been decreed, but for 2026 and beyond for future governor races as well as Senate elections, because what happens on November 5th, we have to also think about what we're going to be doing beyond that. And so we really need to have time to process and also think about what our next steps will be. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is about this idea called political spray. And that's about really having like a widespread impact from a single concentrated source. So like the same way you have an aerosol that will spread out beyond its initial target, like if you've ever used like an aerosol can for anything or spray paint. So we have to kind of spread and pour the resources that we have into one big push. And so political spray really allows us to focus on making strategic actions that can have ripple impacts and also influence a lot of multiple areas in subtle but very powerful ways. So if you really want to be able to cut military spending as well as reduce corporate handouts and protect lives, you have to see that we have limited resources as a community. And so we have to have more precise actions and also create broad cumulative support. And we have to do that by focusing on swing districts as well as key influencers. And over time, those networks will expand. And so we also have to think kind of outside the box and build coalitions across the political spectrum. And we have to combine what progressives are looking at in terms of demilitarization, along with libertarians who are also opposing government overreach and government spending. So when we can fully engage groups across the political spectrum, it really helps us spread our message further. It also increases our visibility without additional effort because we're being able to build upon the support that other groups have already done. And we have to do this with really data-driven work and use the analytics that are available at our disposal now to identify the audiences that are going to be receptive to the work that we do, whether it's from social media or town hall meetings, so that we can reach all corners of the room. And so when we focus on these high impact target areas, we're going to be able to build cross-partisan support, and that has a chain reaction. And so something that seemed impossible or improbable, it becomes possible. And so we can only do that by having calculated influence and also organizing within the larger political space to make real change happen. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. Let's hear from you, brother Mohammed Bashir.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can you just do me a real big favor? Your feed cut out while you were asking what the original question was. Is it possible that you can just repeat a short summary of it?
Yes, I wanted each of you to say something about yourselves for anyone in the viewing or listening audience who may not have seen you on past in past conversations. Say a little about yourself, who you are, and then just share your thoughts on the topic of focus for today.
Oh, okay. So you first the shameless plugs. I'm alhamdulillah, I'm a retired attorney. I do some consulting work now. I'm extraordinarily excited to be on this panel. I have never met the sister before, but you got two other people on the panel who I love with all my heart. And that in Yusuf Rios and Sharif Silmi. So assalamu alaikum to you both. I miss you both, so keep that in mind. I'm retired, 27 years of criminal, constitutional, and civil litigation. I'm the host of the podcast, The Raw Law Project, at hsrn.com, which comes on every Thursday evening from 8 to 10, where we delve into the law and politics and the history of what it is to be connected to law in America. And as it relates to the topic, there are some things that come together in like a perfect storm. This is a perfect storm moment if you are a Muslim, especially if you are a politically astute Muslim, if you are willing to see what's really out there. Politics in America has never really been about who wins the high office. It has always been about who can coalesce, who can unify, and who can wield power. If you remember the great speech by Malcolm X back in '63, I believe it's the Battle of the Bullet, he talks about the unity of voting as a block. That was repeated again in 1992 by Claude Anderson and his masterwork, Powernomics. The idea of the vote as a block, especially if you're in a community that has a small, what would be considered a small percentage of the population, especially the voting population. So being willing to take, hopefully we won't be a community that is sidetracked by the arguments of single issue voting, the argument of race baiting, things like that. And we stay true to the idea that in order for you to wield power in America, you have to do it lockstep, arm step, and unified. And if you can do that, this is a perfect storm of time for Muslims and people of goodwill to step forward and do the changes that are necessary here in America.
Okay, my brother, thank you very much. And that speech was actually 64, Ballot or the Bullet, and it's often referenced in much of the give and take that's taking place right now around this very hot election season. All right, let's now hear from our brother Attorney Sharif Silmi. Let's hear from you, Aki.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I think that so just to give you just a quick background, I am originally from Northern California. I moved to the Baltimore area now almost 9 years ago, and we came up through a lot of the masjid activism and youth organizations, like for example looking up to Amir Abdul Malik, who I know has been on your program, and he was like a hero to us when we were little kids, and that sort of kind of just speaking truth, like without compromise, was always something that was, I think, ingrained in us. And then as you sort of grow older, and then like I was influenced a lot by like Dr. Hatim's ideas out of UC Berkeley and others, and then just like through obviously going through undergrad and then eventually law school, and I read a lot of the literature on the left, and after 9/11 and things of that sort. but at the end of the day, I think when we want to talk about our sort of role as Muslims here in America, it necessarily requires that we have a united front, and that block vote that Brother Muhammad Bashir was referring to, I think, is a necessity. And if we're not able to sort of work on that or put that into place, it's going to be, I think, a very big problem. And I think so. Jazakallah khair for putting this together and helping us to kind of talk through those points, because ultimately, we remember the hadith, and I think it's the most pertinent hadith to kind of put out there, that that the nations will summon each other upon you as you call guests to eat from a plate of food. And the Sahaba responded to the Prophet ﷺ, will we be few in numbers on that day, O Messenger of God? And he said, no, rather you will be many on that day, but you will be disunited and weak like the foam on the ocean, and God will remove the fear in the hearts of your enemies and place in your hearts al-wahan, which means love of this world, hubb ad-dunya wa karahiyat al-maut. And I think we've like, it's very clear that we've reached that space. So one thing I've seen in Maryland, for example, is like these sorts of folks that are involved in this political space who, host the politicians, which I think is good. We need to engage the politicians, but they do so in a way where I feel like the politicians are laughing at us. They're like rolling out the red carpet and, feeding them the biryani or the makluba or whatever it might be. And then it's like, they're the same people who are taking millions and millions of dollars from APEC and funding, bombs to commit genocide in Palestine and participating in things that are like targeting Muslims here in America. And, and we're just like, we just want a photo op. And, it's shameful. And it just really makes me feel that, there's multiple levels to this hadith, that we've become like the foam, whether it's that we're easily moved, whether it's that we're disunited, or whether it's that we're covering the ocean of truth by our arrogance and by our sort of egos. So, it's just something to think about. And that's what caused me to get involved with the work of Care Action Maryland, which is a 501c4 organization, not the 501c3 that we all know of as CARE. So inshallah, what Care Action hopes to do is to, organize votes and organize money to impact those things that are of concern to the Muslims, and, doing so in a way that's going to be more targeted towards our interests, inshallah.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Thank you, Brother Sharif. Let's now hear from Imam Yusuf Rios. I see he's usually where I see him, in his traveling office. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. Let's hear from you, Aki.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your brother, Imam Yusuf Rios, coming to you from Philadelphia at the moment. I'm Philly native originally, a concerned citizen. I'm here to just comment and add and think through some of this as well. Share some ideas, learn. That's where I'm at in this complex situation that we're in today. I will say that one of the things that has been needed for a while and we have not developed, which I thought, actually I should be fair. Dr. Andrew March, he began to systematize some of the positions that Muslims have taken. And he talked about the whole idea of liberal citizenship and how he has a whole book on it. And he talked about, forgive me because the complete title is escaping my memory at the moment. But there he began to collect opinions that Muslims have generated from fatwas and their experience. And it kind of shows that Muslims in the U.S. have some sort of political philosophy. and have some sort of direction, but it's only a beginning point. I think that prior, and that really is representative of where the Muslims are at now. Maybe you can even throw in there like the Warathin community. But I think prior to that, we had a very activist approach. The Warathin community. But I think prior to that, we had a very activist approach. The Warathin community.
What's going on with the audio,
but I think
brother?
prior to that, we had a very activist approach. The Warathin.
We're having a little
Yeah, prior to that, prior to 9/11, we had a pretty much of an activist approach, and it was very grassroots. We were just beginning to experiment with the idea of being involved in the established political system, and part of that, maybe the Warathin community what had preceded the rest of the community. I don't want to keep using the immigrant community, but the other groups that have established themselves here. But we still are in that phase of how do we make sense of this monster, of how do we engage in seeking our rights, how do we have influence, and I didn't catch the sister's name, but how do we build political power? And so I think that we need to be sensitive to that we are a work in progress, and we are learning, and unfortunately there's no real way to play leapfrog in this. This takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes sometimes making mistakes. It takes money. It takes organization. So I just want to share with you and comment. That's where I'm at. I'm not pretending that I have all of this stuff figured out by any means.
Okay. Thank you, my brother. Let's go to a commercial break, and inshallah ta'ala, we will come back on the other side with some, I believe, rich conversation, inshallah.
Through your donations, our teams are on the ground in Gaza, providing support and delivering necessary aid to families affected. The people of Gaza need your help. Give hope. Donate today to Penny Appeal South Africa. www.pennyappeal.org.za 031 1100 573.
We are here on the ground with Penny Appeal organizations in Gaza.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Yasin Badat Financial Advisory. Are your financial goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team, armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27 33 346 2071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, Now We Cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. The U.S. electoral divide, where do you stand, is our topic for today. Our guests for today's conversation are Professor Nadia B. Ahmed, Brother Mohammed Bashir, Brother Sharif Silmi, and Imam Yusuf Rios. And I'm really, really happy to have all four of them on today. The Imam raised the question, how do we build, how do we build political substance, power, whatever term you want to use? There's a piece of video. In fact, there are two videos. The first one I'd like for you to see is one that I'll be honest, when I saw it, it shocked me. And but it goes to the question, I mean, is this a legit way? Is this an effective way of building political power? Let's see that video, Brother Sadiq.
Good afternoon, Michiganders. As the president said, we just had a positive meeting with President Trump. We as Muslims stand with President Trump because he promises peace. He promises peace, not war. We are supporting Donald Trump because he promised to end war in the Middle East and Ukraine. The bloodshed has to stop all over the world, and I think this man can make that happen. I personally believe that God saved his life twice for a reason.
Okay, let's begin with you, dear sister. What are your thoughts on that little piece of video you just saw? Is this the way to build political power?
I mean, I think anything you do can be a way to build political power, but I think you also have to think about authentic self-expression. And I think it's also important to recognize that Donald Trump did make the gesture to actually have a meeting with them, which is something the Vice President Kamala Harris has not done. Every way that I've seen that they can shun the Muslim community, I've seen them do that. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's something that should be said for that, is that a campaign that previously had been built upon a Muslim ban is now actively courting the vote. And so I think it's not just about the outcome, it's also about the optics behind it. So what it looks like. And so right there, you see Muslims right there front and center supporting Donald Trump as the next president. Next candidate. And so I think that we should kind of look and see how that is also coming into play and how that's also shifting the dynamic. And since that time, it's been over 24 hours since it was first shared. There hasn't been any massive shift within the Democratic Party to really encourage Muslim votes. It's always really just kind of hanging on to it. And I was on a DNC member call on this Friday afternoon, and there's a sense that they may be an underdog. And that's just how usually they play it, and they've come up successfully in 2020 and again in 2022 when people have counted them out. But on the call, the chair, because he's been doing a lot of work, Jamie Harrison, to really build up the campaign, and he's worked really hard going from different states, and so he became emotional, kind of, and started thanking everybody. He started crying, and then in deep down, I also kind of reflected on this, like what I saw, and then talked about it with my husband, and I was like, those weren't just tears of of memory and the work that's being done for appreciation, those were also tears of fear that that they may be losing, and all this work that they've done will be for nothing. And so I think we kind of have to realize now that this race is really just down to a coin toss.
Mm-hmm. And before we move on to Brother Muhammad, I'd like for you, Sister Nadia, to share with the viewing audience and with our brothers here who may not know your background, your relationship with the DNC. You are an insider. You've been for a while, and you had a for me, it made me angry when I heard about what happened to you at the convention. Share a little bit about that. Your inside track on a lot of what is taking place within the DNC.
Well, in 2020, when I helping to organize, been working with a lot of other groups to organize for the Bernie campaign. And then once the Bernie campaign we knew wasn't going to materialize, I also started continuing to volunteer on the Biden campaign. And so I organized a lot of phone banking events, essentially from where I'm sitting right now. And through that work, I ended up getting a seat on the DNC. And it was because they actually canceled an event I was organizing, the Florida Democratic Party, because I was going to have a Palestinian speaker. And so that really made me very upset. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to show them. So then I ran, and I didn't just win. I crushed it. I came in, I was the highest vote getter for women, in the election in our state party. And that just showed me there was a space for a Muslim woman hijabi as well as a progressive within the party. And so, and I've been going to DNC meetings for the past 3-4 years now. And so I really see kind of how it is. And they really don't welcome Muslim participation. Any way that you can be sidelined, it's happening. And so I felt that every time they kind of push us aside, is we just have to keep making our way, infiltrating in further, and just coming back with more numbers. And there also hasn't been a single Muslim that served on the DNC longer than 4 years, because in the 4 years they get to know you, they know how you really are, and so they don't have you back. And so we were trying, our goal was to get as many Muslims delegates elected into the convention. And so I thought I was like, I can get 500 if people kind of figure out this plan, and we can do it, because because I figured Biden, something would happen to him between then and the convention, and he wouldn't be the candidate. And I wasn't able to be successful because people just everything happened with Leslie. People just couldn't buy into it. I was like, you just have to be stealth Biden candidates and make it in. And actually, we had the lowest number of Muslim delegates than ever, because I thought, we could just get 1 or 2 extra people from each prior delegate. And we'd had up to about 225 in 2016, and about 175, 200 in 2020. So I thought it wasn't too hard to get up to 500, but we actually had the lowest number, which was about 60, because the campaign actively removed people who they knew were actively, on their social media were negative against the Democrats. And so we decided, okay, we're going to organize a protest from the convention floor like they've held before. And we had no support, even among the Muslims, because to get credentialed at the DNC, it takes a lot of work. And then basically if you want to, we were like, we have to do it on the first day. And people didn't want to give up their credentials. They didn't want, because they didn't want to think, they go protest the first day, they won't be allowed in the second day. And I was like, if we don't go protest, then it's a waste of our time to even be there. So our protest was basically only down to 3 people. And considering there was that many people, so how do you kind of maximize a protest from the convention floor? Is we're like, okay, we'll just get a big banner and hold it up when Biden is speaking. And so logistically sneaking it in and all that stuff. And then Biden was the speaker at the end of the night. So we basically had to also not get caught. Because, people start getting nervous and talking. And I was like, just literally, I was like, don't talk about anything. We're just going to do it and go forward with it. And then, I was planning this, thinking about different contingencies. I didn't really think about, okay, I'm going to hold up the sign for a minute or two. Somebody will take a couple pictures, and then they will, they they'll take the sign away and that's the end of it. But instead, they weren't able to take the sign away. And then we had these guys from the labor union seated behind us. And they started hitting me on the head with the campaign signs, with these vertical Joe Biden signs. And the inside of the sign had wooden planks inside of it. And so my mom was like, why don't you turn around and hit them? Or just, I was like, my goal was to hold up the sign as long as I could, which said, stop arming Israel. And so I got a concussion from it because there was like repeated hits from the sign. And really it's been like a long process, like to recover from it, because even though like, it sounds like I'm fine, like it's really kind of impacted the way kind of like I move my head and kind of do some basic functions like driving, and even it's impacted my memory. I had to get like a 2-hour EEG test on Friday and have to have have the neurologist tell me what's wrong on Monday again. And so it's like I didn't expect to be like met with violence, and then also have complete lack of accountability as well.
Yeah.
From it. And so that's, I think, what's really troubling, is that they can get away with causing a concussion at the DNC and then just have no repercussions.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Brother Muhammad, what are your thoughts on what our sister just said, and that video, that short video that we saw? What are your thoughts on that? Especially with you being a seasoned,
he's on mute,
activist-oriented, retired. Is right, brother? Something's going on with your audio again.
He's on mute.
I muted my mic because the kids were in the background. But let me say this. I've probably been around longer than most of the people on the panel, at least here on this earth. So I've seen a lot. Mm-hmm. One thing that I recognized very early on is that politics is what the Nation of Islam called politricks. When you don't have the issue, when you don't review the history, you have a tendency to repeat it. Yeah. So here you have now a group of, I'm assuming these were Arabs who were talking on Trump's stage, accepting a promise from him that he's going to stop the war. You notice in that particular speech that the person didn't say he was going to free Palestine. You notice he didn't say he was going to give Palestinians one man, one vote. You notice he didn't say they were going to go back to the level of right of return. All the things that would be intimately connected to justice in Palestine, they didn't mention that. They just wanted to stop the violence. And that's why I said we cannot get caught up in one issue voting. So what you saw there was something that has happened to the Black community over and over and over and over again. And so therefore, what it suggests to me is that the brothers who were on that stage, no disrespect to them intended, they don't understand the history of America, and therefore they have sidestepped the study of what it is to have been Black in America, who have fought this particular battle, who have gone to the Democratic National Convention, who have been shunned by the Democratic Party, who got Fannie Lou Hamer was in 1964. Mm-hmm. This sister here just got finished speaking in 2024. Fannie Lou Hamer was supposed to give a speech on the floor, and they cut the speech so that, and matter of fact, truth is, Lyndon Johnson, to make sure that her speech was not heard, held a press conference so all the cameras would come to him and would deny her the opportunity to be able to speak. That's now, right. I am not against Muslims joining a particular party. I think that's how you get in, because you don't just fight this particular battle. You don't just gain power from outside, you gain it from inside, outside, over, top, under, wherever you can find it, you seize power. You try to get into the halls of power. But you can't do it without recognition of who it is that you're trying to gain power from. The Democrats are no different as it relates to power in the Black community, in the Muslim community, in the minority communities, than the Republicans. They both, listen to me closely, still operate under the historic premise of the Dred Scott decision, which says that a Black man has no right that a white man is bound to respect. Now, just substitute Muslim in there, substitute Asian in there, that they have no right that a white man is bound to respect. You know that from what happened with Nikki Haley and Vivaswamy in the Republican primaries, that a brown man has no right that a white man is bound to respect. You see it happening just last week in Michigan. An elected representative there was denied access to the Democratic fundraiser in his city, in his state, only because he was a Muslim. So until, and I'm not against, again, him pushing his way or wanting to be a part of that, etc. But until we get a clear understanding as to the history, we can never move the power needle, because again, that's what creates the disunity. If we sit down and say, this is the history of the Democratic National Committee. Keith Ellison should have been the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. He was Muslim. He was sandbagged, and therefore he left politics and went to become an attorney general. Bernie Sanders was supposed to be the Democratic nominee. He was sandbagged by the Democratic Party, and therefore he's been off the so-called independent stage and now firmly implanted in the Democratic stage. We don't look at the history, and I tell you, this is my honest goodness opinion based on 64 years of dealing with politics. That is that the reason why we don't do that is because we don't understand, we refuse to accept that the history that is writing America comes from the Black community. And so if we can sidestep the Black community, then we can gain power. Or we can step over the Black community and the struggle of the Black community, we can gain power. But until we begin to digest what the Black community brought to politics in America, we will never understand it. We will never come together and coalesce and say, we're not going to be repeating the same things that happened with them. One last thing. 1955, Adam Clayton Powell was the most popular politician in the country, a Black man from out of Harlem, New York. He demanded a civil rights act, a civil rights bill. They used to call him Mr. Civil Rights. He demanded it from the Democratic National Committee. They told him, sit down. The community isn't ready for that yet. We're not ready for that. This is the Democratic National Committee. He, being the arrogant SOB that he was, took it to Dwight Eisenhower, who was running on the Republican side, and demanded a Civil Rights Act. And Eisenhower promised him a Civil Rights Act, which led to the Civil Rights Act of 1959. Because Adam Clayton Powell, a Democrat, the most popular politician in the country, flipped the Black vote toward Eisenhower, and Eisenhower became president. You want to talk about power? You have to be able to say, if I'm in this game, then I have to do it for power, not for prestige, not to be seen, not to be photo opt, as Sharif would say. None of that. You have to be in it for power, and sometimes that means giving up the seat so that you can unify the people for whatever is going to come next. That's my take on it.
Excellent, excellent point. And I can't help but wonder if this was the that couldn't have been the context, because you said Eisenhower wasn't yet in office.
That's right. He was running for president.
He was running for president.
Right.
Later, he would say something that I found to be very, very, very profound, very thought-provoking. A delegation came to him on a civil rights issue, and they laid out their case, their argument. At the end of the argument, he said to them, I agree with you. Now make me do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very profound. Now make me do it. With that being said, Brother Sharif, your thoughts, Aki?
Yeah, I think, first of all, to go back to Professor Nadia's point, I mean, you know, I hope you have legal representation and you go after these clowns, because that's just unbelievable. Now that you told the story, I actually remember seeing it. And you know, that really needs to be dealt with. And if we as a Muslim community are not able to do that with you, then we got more problems. And if we can't, so I would just say, whatever you need, inshallah, I'm ready to help or point you in the right direction. I'm sure you have, you know, very capable of doing that yourself, but to whatever value it's worth, inshallah, you know, I'm here for you. The other point, is that I think look, what happened in Michigan with our Yemeni brothers, I think, is very interesting. I mean, I'll say on one hand, I'm somewhat okay with it in a sense that, look, I think the Democratic candidate has been so, not just, I want to say incompetent, but I think just disrespectful toward not only the Muslims, but I think toward folks who are just against war, running around with Miss Cheney and, promoting a hawkish war policy. And this isn't just about Palestine. This is, I mean, essentially her posturing in terms of, a very hawkish Hillary Clinton-like foreign policy that is against the interest of the American people, whether it's Muslims or any other community. I mean, I think, have seen, poor white communities having to, send their children off to war and then come back and get addicted to opioids for pain relief, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, minority communities, etc. So this thing about fighting wars with other people's children needs to end. And I think that the way that, the Harris campaign has been, presenting, they made a purposeful decision that we think we could win with white Republican women. And if they may be right, we don't know, but they will govern as neocon, warmongers. So, in that sense, I think we don't have any choice but to oppose them. And there are groups out there such as Mgage, who, I think there's a lot of problematic issues there, who have, endorsed, her. But I think the vast majority of Muslims are seeing that this is not the way to go. So I do understand the benefit of working within the Democratic Party, and I'm a registered Democrat. I hope that, but I think we need to change the Democratic Party, as I think the professor is actually doing and working on. So the one thing I would say is, like, if a Trump does get in because of the stupidity of the Democratic Party, because you got to be a horrible candidate to lose to Trump, because Trump is not a popular figure. He's an incompetent fool. I'd actually be a lot more worried if we had a Tom Cotton running for president than a Donald Trump, because that he's like a competent fascist and warmonger. So I think there would be a lot bigger problems there. But I think if Trump does win, and the fact that some Muslims supported him, it might be a little bit okay for us, compared to just having a completely antagonistic relationship between the community and probably a very maybe autocratic type of president. So in that sense, it'd be good. But I think the larger issue with the Yemeni community in particular is that they are, I think, not reading history. I think that there's a disconnect between a very sort of, I think that it's similar in other communities as well in the Muslim community, but I think the Yemenis in particular have a sort of one-track mindset with regard to wanting to access power, and also not necessarily having the best interests of all of their community. Rather, it's sort of an elite bunch of mostly business people who are put in charge. There's like the Yemeni Grocers Association. There's other sorts of organizations, and there's good people. I mean, the president of the Yemeni Community Association is a friend of mine, or the former president at least, and they mean well, but at the same time, I think they're sort of still in that sort of post 9/11 mindset of Muslims of how can we get accepted by America, whereas I think the real power play should be how do we have how do we sort of leverage our money and votes and rights to to actually grab power. And I would just quickly say, like, the work that I think we're doing with regard to CARE Action, particularly in Maryland, is not about 2024. I don't think that this election is going to, we're not organized enough to really impact this election in any major way at a national level. At a local level, we did block vote against APEC donor David Trone in the Democratic primary, and we did back Angela Also Brooks, who at least is willing to speak with us, meet with us, and hear us out, and has called for a ceasefire, for example, and it just generally has a better position with the Muslims, even on non-Palestine issues. And then with regard to the presidency, we are definitely urging folks to vote for people who are against genocide, and are urging people to vote for Dr. Jill Stein. But again, we're in Maryland, and we know Harris is going to win by 40 points, so it's not really going to make a difference. So,
okay, thank you for that, brother. I wish, I'm looking at the time, subhanAllah, I wish I had requested of the execs at Salam Media an additional 30 minutes for today's conversation, because this is so important and so time sensitive. We really did need more time. We should have had 90 minutes for this, but we have what we have, and inshallah ta'ala, we're winding down now. Let's hear from you, Imam Yusuf, inshallah.
Roughly, how much time do we have?
We're at 10:55 now. 10:56.
Let me try to summarize to kind of give you time back. One of the things, firstly, let me say that I've lived in Dearborn, so I know the culture. I've lived in Dearborn. I was one of the first steady English speaking visiting imams at Masjid Dix when it was called Masjid Dix. And so I kind of see where they're coming from. Ford brought the Yemenis here to work at the Ford plant.
Mm-hmm.
So the Yemenis have been here for a long time over there. And the Muslims, the Lebanese and others, they have been there for a long time. Whether Shi'i or Muslim, I don't want to get in, or Sunni, I don't want to get into all of the divisions. But they've lacked for years building any real power. They've only started like kind of playing with that game within the last maybe like about 10 years or so. They kind of took a little control over Hamtramck, but it just shows you that for so many years they've been out of the play, and they're now getting into the play. Even trying to get into the congressional level, the Muslims in general, not just the Arabic speakers. So there's still a lack of political consciousness and organization at the level to really get somewhere. They're still in the beginning, and that's the same. I was in PA. I was listening to some of the talks about what they wanted to do at the state level, and it was extremely disorganized to the point where I just told the people, listen, when it came to the issue of what do we do with Palestine, I was like, we might as well at this point just join effective non-Muslim groups, because we're not going anywhere with what I was seeing. And that's not to critique anyone negatively, but we lack real organization. And the same problem, I think that is there with the Yemeni community. People are voting on the LGBT front. At the bottom line, they're saying they want to be against LGBT and whatever they can do for Palestine, they're trying to do, but nothing is very strategic. And coming through the downtown area on the highway here in Philadelphia, I saw a sign that says Trump supports Israel. It was all red and white. So then when you go, you look at Michigan, and then you see that Muslims are supporting, Trump. We lack real organization. We, as a community, we started off with the political party, the Democratic Party, and we got some people in, even if we didn't agree on everything. And they got in not necessarily from our political strategizing, but they're there. We have people there that have some sort of voice for us at the congressional level, but we never pushed it any further because we want somebody to do the work for us. That's part of the problem. We want somebody to do the work for us. And I want to go back to the point that our elder Bashir was talking about, Muhammad Bashir.
Yeah, 1 minute too, Aki.
We have to have a strategy that's multipolar, whether it's a political party, whether it's a third party, whether it's on the street, whether it's the Democratic Party. I don't care if we're operating on different fronts, but we have to be extremely organized and sophisticated and targeted, and we're lacking that. So everybody's just kind of functioning on their own, and so we're not effective because of that. So we need to like come back to this and kind of ask ourselves, what is our political philosophy, and how can we operate on multiple levels? We can't afford to be attacking each other. And those who have gained power and taken power, that's exactly what they've done. They're in every political party. They're coming from every different angle, and that's the reality. And we have to operate on multiple fronts, but in an organized way, in a mobilizing way.
Okay, thank you very much, Imam Yusuf Rios, Brother Muhammad Bashir, our brother Sharif Silmi, and my dear sister, Dr. Nadia B. Ahmed. I want to thank you all for joining us today. There was another piece of video that I wanted us to see, but we don't have time for that now. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm gonna share it later with along with something else. But what I want to ask each of you to do, if you don't mind, because this topic is so very important, and this upcoming election that's scheduled for this coming Tuesday is going to be very, 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 I mean, not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. It's going to be very consequential, and there's going to be turbulence. There's going to be a tremendous amount of fallout, no matter which way this election goes. So what I want to ask each of you to do is, if you can just write up a summary of your thoughts coming out of this discussion that we had today, that I want to put together and share as a package, along with my own thoughts, to our brothers and sisters and those outside of our community who are concerned about where we are as a nation, who are deeply empathetic with what the genocide taking place in occupied Palestine and the Zionist aggression now on Lebanon, we just need to build on this on the momentum that we've seen over the past year, not allow it to do our part to ensure that it doesn't just dissipate after the election. I don't think it will, because of the demonic nature of Israel and what it is doing right now. But we just want to harness it as best as we possibly can and provide as much guidance as we can. I want to thank all four of you for engaging in this very, very difficult subject with alhamdulillah, the kind of civility that is expected of those of us who say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now, with that said, I should also note, and brother Sadi, you can show that banner, brother. This coming Friday, I will be in Richmond, Virginia, the first Friday of each month. I've been serving as guest khatib for Jummah at Masjid Bilal. Well, this coming Friday, after the Jummah, later in the evening, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to have a forum. And this is going to be the focus of our discussion, inshallah, within our community there. So if you're in the Richmond area, please join us. With that being said, I want to conclude with these remarks. While the Punish Kamala Harris campaign has taken on steam in certain parts of America and abroad, the campaign is very, in my humble opinion, it's counterproductive. And the reason I say this is for a number of reasons. My principal reason is the following. The primary decision maker for what the world is witnessing today is Joe Biden. And this sorry excuse for an American president has already been punished by being denied a second term. To now punish Harris, whose only real crime is behaving like a typical politician. Rhetorical cowardice in the face of a genocide. At the expense, and this is very important, at the expense of rewarding Donald Trump with a return to the Oval Office. It doesn't make rational sense to me. Trump is an undeniable facilitating factor in what the world is witnessing today in that tortured part of the world called the Middle East. Rewarding him with a second term does not make good moral or rational sense to me. Our elders used to say, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. I truly believe a second Trump term will significantly deepen the Middle East crisis and have a very profound and punishing impact for Americans on the domestic side of the line as well. As I understand it, one of the principal objectives of al-Maqasid al-Sharia is to reduce harm. You know, the five necessities of Maqasid Sharia, you know, protection of faith or religion, protection of life, protection of lineage, protection of intellect, and protection of property. You know, and surely Allah knows best, but this is my humble opinion. You know, I want to conclude today's broadcast with a message from one of our sisters that was with us recently, Dr. Quraisha Ismail Suleiman, out of South Africa. This was her message. Assalamu alaikum. To the Ummah of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on Monday, the 28th of October, South Africa will make its case against Israel's genocide of the Palestinians at The Hague. Let us all increase in dua and let each read at least once Surah Yasin with the niyat that Allah take his revenge on the Zalimeen and on all those who are actively facilitating this genocide. We have the greatest power with us. We need to believe it, the Quran, recite from it, and seek Allah's blessings with yaqeen. And this is the Arabic term that generally translates as certainty. She asked that we please share her reminder in all of our groups and posts, and she ended with these words, quote, Allah is the Almighty, the All-Powerful. We fear none but Him. Break the shackles of domination, subjugation, and intimidation. And with that, we end with Surah Al-Asr as we normally do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalus salihat wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr, which means in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time, through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.